Resilience isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. No one wakes up unbreakable. No one arrives in this world with an iron will. Strength like that, it's earned. It's constructed over time, forged in the middle of hard days, setbacks, and personal storms. You don't become resilient because life is easy. You become resilient because it's not. The people who bend but don't break, they aren't lucky. They've just learned how to carry pressure without falling apart. They've built something on the inside that can't be stolen by circumstance. They've developed a way of thinking that's stronger than the waves that come against them. And it's not about pretending everything is fine. It's not about forcing positivity. It's not about ignoring pain or smiling through chaos. It's about knowing how to recover, how to stay grounded when everything around you is shaking, how to keep moving when your strength is fading. That kind of mindset doesn't happen by accident. It takes work. It takes intention. It takes practice. And the good news is anyone can build it. You don't need perfect genes. You don't need a smooth history. You don't need special circumstances. You just need the willingness to get stronger, no matter how things feel right now. Resilience is a decision every day. The decision to face what's in front of you instead of running from it. The decision to learn from pain instead of avoiding it. The decision to rise when everything in you says, stay down. That's what separates the ones who grow from the ones who crumble. And resilience is not built in theory. It's built in action. You don't get stronger by reading about strength. You get stronger by showing up over and over, especially when it's hard, especially when it's inconvenient, especially when no one's watching. This mindset, it's not about toughness. It's about endurance. It's about adaptability. It's about knowing who you are, even when everything else is uncertain. It's the mental foundation that allows you to keep moving, keep thinking, keep acting with purpose, even when you're exhausted. Because life is not predictable. It throws curveballs. It challenges your plans. It tests your patience. And if your strength is surface level, if your mindset is built only for the good days, you will always feel like you're starting over. But if your mindset is resilient, you stop being a victim of circumstances. You stop waiting for the weather to be perfect. You stop needing things to go your way in order to function. You adapt. You adjust. You find your footing again and again and again. And the best part, resilience is transferable. When you build it in one part of your life, it starts showing up in other places. Your work, your relationships, your focus, your habits. When you know how to stay standing inside, you bring strength to everything you touch. So if you're tired of being knocked down and staying down, if you're done hoping for life to get easier, if you're ready to get stronger, sharper, tougher in the best way possible, this is how you begin. It's not about being perfect. It's not about being fearless. It's about building the kind of mindset that doesn't quit. The kind of mindset that keeps moving through chaos. The kind that keeps growing when most people shrink. The kind that doesn't need easy conditions to create excellence. It just needs a decision, a plan, and the willingness to follow through. The first step to building a resilient mindset is to take full ownership of your life. All of it. The good, the bad, the beautiful, the brutal. Because until you take ownership, you will always feel like life is happening to you instead of through you. You'll always feel powerless, always feel reactive, always feel like a victim. And as long as you see yourself as a victim, you cannot build resilience. You cannot build strength, because resilience requires responsibility. Not blame, not guilt, not shame, but the willingness to say, This is my life. I will own every inch of it. People talk about empowerment like it's something you find, but you don't find power. You reclaim it. You take it back every time you stop pointing fingers and start asking better questions. Not, why is this happening to me? But what can I do about this? That's the shift. That's where resilience begins. Because when you change your questions, you change your posture. You stop slumping into helplessness and start standing in authority. Even if you didn't cause the problem, you still choose how to face it. You still choose who you become through it. And that choice, that posture, is everything. Life will never hand you a version of reality that's free from pain. There will always be disappointment. There will always be struggle. But the people who rise through it, they don't waste energy resenting the pressure. They use the pressure. They own it. They turn it into fuel. Ownership doesn't mean you blame yourself for everything. It means you accept that your future is in your hands. It means you decide that no matter what happened in the past, you get to choose how you respond now. You get to decide what happens next. That's a radical shift because it requires you to stop waiting for life to be fair. It requires you to stop hoping that someone else will fix it. It requires you to drop the story that says, if they would just change, I'd be okay. And it forces you to ask, what part of this can I change right now? That question is uncomfortable, but it's powerful. It puts you back in the driver's seat. It stops the emotional bleeding. Because even if the situation is hard, even if it's not your fault, there is always something you can control. Always something you can improve. Always a next step you can take. And the moment you start taking those steps, you shift from reactive to proactive. You stop being tossed around by circumstances, and you start shaping your experience. You stop waiting to be rescued, and you start showing up like the hero of your story. That kind of ownership is rare. Most people stay stuck because they've built an identity around being stuck. They've told themselves, this is just how I am, or this is just how it is. And they don't realize how much power they've handed away with those words. But you're not stuck. You're just undertrained. You're just living beneath your capability. And the only way to rise out of that place is to stop narrating your limitations and start building your skills. Start building your discipline. Start building your strength. Ownership gives you the leverage to do that. Because when you take full responsibility, you stop arguing with reality. You stop resisting the facts. You stop spending all your energy wishing things were different. And you use that energy to make a difference. It doesn't happen overnight. Ownership is a practice, a muscle. You have to train it every day. You have to catch yourself when you start slipping into blame. You have to notice when you start giving your power away. And you have to pull it back. You have to say, no, I own this. You own your attitude. You own your effort. You own your time. You own your words. You own your habits. You own your follow-through. You own the energy you bring to the room, the focus you bring to your work, the patience you bring to your growth. You own it all. And when you do, when you really start owning your role in every moment, you build momentum. You build belief. You start seeing evidence that you are not powerless, that you are not fragile, that you are not broken. You're just beginning. And that belief, that changes everything. Because once you believe you can change something, you stop tolerating what doesn't serve you. You stop settling. You stop making excuses. You start moving. You start creating. You start leading. But it has to start with ownership. You cannot build resilience on blame. You cannot build strength on stories that say you're stuck. You cannot build a better life while waiting for someone else to hand it to you. You have to go first. You have to take the wheel. And that begins with a simple but powerful decision. The decision to stop saying, I can't, and start saying, I haven't yet. The decision to stop waiting for easier and start training for stronger. The decision to stop handing away your control and start taking it back. One thought, one choice, one day at a time. The second step to building a resilient mindset is learning how to reframe adversity. Because adversity isn't going away. No matter how prepared you are, no matter how focused you are, no matter how strong you become, life will hit. The question is not if, but when. And if you haven't trained your mind to see adversity differently, it will always feel like a setback. It will always feel like a threat. But when you build a resilient mindset, adversity becomes something else entirely. It becomes a signal, a lesson, a doorway. Adversity is not the enemy. It's the classroom. It's where you learn what you're really made of. It's where you stretch. It's where your edges get exposed so they can be sharpened. The most resilient people you know, they weren't made in comfort. They were shaped in fire. And they all have one thing in common. They don't see adversity as the end. They see it as information. They've trained themselves to reframe the challenge, to stop asking, why me? And start asking, what's here for me? That shift in mindset changes everything. Because now, every problem carries potential. Every setback holds a seed. Every painful moment becomes raw material you can use to build. And when you live that way, life no longer feels like something you survive. It becomes something you shape. Reframing is a skill. It's not about lying to yourself. It's not about pretending everything is good when it's not. It's about finding the empowering angle, the useful perspective, the lens that keeps you in motion instead of keeping you in fear. You can train yourself to do that. Every time adversity shows up, you pause, you breathe, you zoom out. You say, this is hard, but it's here. So now what? What can this teach me? What's it exposing in me that I need to deal with? What's it inviting me to become? That's a resilient question. Not one that hides from pain, but one that leans in. Not one that avoids reality, but one that meets it fully and asks, what now? Because if you only ever see adversity as a roadblock, you'll never see the doors it opens. And adversity will open doors if you're willing to walk through them, if you're willing to shift your interpretation. Because what happens to you matters far less than what you believe about what happens to you. The story you attach to the pain, that's what shapes you. Two people can go through the same pain. One grows, one breaks. One learns, one shuts down. One evolves, one becomes bitter. The difference isn't the pain, it's the perspective. It's the meaning. It's the mindset. You cannot control everything that comes into your life, but you can control how you label it. You can control how you hold it. You can control what you build from it. That's not toxic positivity. That's mental strength. And the more you practice it, the easier it gets. You stop spiraling. You stop dramatizing. You stop catastrophizing every hard thing. You start thinking clearly. You start responding instead of reacting. You start using your energy to solve instead of suffer. Because that's what resilient people do. They feel the pain, but they don't get paralyzed by it. They feel the pressure, but they don't collapse under it. They stay grounded. They stay present. They stay resourceful. And eventually they become grateful for the hard things, not because they enjoy suffering, but because they've seen what the suffering revealed. They've seen how much stronger they became when they stopped resisting and started reframing. It's not about avoiding the storm. It's about becoming someone who can walk through the storm without losing who they are. It's about staying calm in chaos. It's about staying connected to your values when the pressure rises. It's about choosing your perspective on purpose. You build that when you decide that no matter what comes your way, you'll find something useful in it. You'll make it count. You'll walk out of it sharper than you walked in. You'll leave with a lesson, with a tool, with a deeper knowing of what you're capable of. And the more you do that, the less afraid you are of hard things. Because now, adversity isn't a mystery. You've been through it before. You know how to reframe it. You know how to hold it. You know how to move through it without losing your fire. That's what makes you resilient. Not just surviving pain, but repurposing it. Not just tolerating challenge, but thriving in it. Not just hoping the storm passes, but learning to dance in the rain, to breathe, to think, to grow. The third step to building a resilient mindset is learning how to regulate your emotional state. Because without emotional regulation, even the strongest strategy will fall apart. Even the best plan will get sabotaged. Even the most disciplined person will unravel when the pressure hits. Your emotions aren't the enemy, but they're not always accurate either. They aren't commands, they're signals. And if you react to every signal without discernment, you'll live in emotional chaos. Up one moment, down the next. Motivated 1 hour, overwhelmed the next. A resilient mind is steady, not numb, not robotic, just centered. It can feel deeply without drowning. It can acknowledge discomfort without becoming it. It can hold the emotion without handing it the wheel. Emotional regulation isn't about suppression. It's not about ignoring what you feel. It's about creating enough space between what you feel and what you do, so that you choose your response instead of defaulting to reaction. That space is everything. It's where wisdom lives. It's where your highest self has room to speak. Without that space, you'll say things you regret. You'll quit things you were built for. You'll burn bridges that were meant to carry you. And here's the truth. Most people were never taught how to regulate. They were taught how to numb, how to avoid, how to explode, but not how to sit with discomfort, not how to breathe through the moment, not how to hold tension without turning it into chaos. So you build the skill. You build it like a muscle. You start by noticing. When the emotion rises, you name it. You don't push it down. You acknowledge it. You breathe. You stay present. You slow everything down by just 5 seconds. 5 seconds between stimulus and response can save you hours of regret. You ask yourself, is this emotion useful right now? Sometimes it is. Sometimes anger gives you fuel. Sometimes fear makes you sharper. But sometimes those same emotions are just noise. And your job isn't to obey them. Your job is to direct them. That's the skill, emotional direction. Not suppression, direction. Taking the energy and channeling it where it helps instead of where it harms. Letting the frustration push you deeper into focus. Letting the anxiety remind you to prepare better. Letting the sadness slow you down long enough to reflect. When you do that, your emotional landscape changes. You stop being afraid of your feelings. You stop being dominated by your moods. You become the one who creates your internal climate instead of being a slave to the weather. And that's when you become trustworthy, not just to others, to yourself. Because you no longer fear who you become under pressure. You know how to lead yourself through chaos. You know how to steady yourself when the storm starts. This is what real strength looks like. Not external control, but internal order. You build a home inside yourself that's not easily shaken. You don't avoid intensity. You learn how to hold it. You learn how to ground yourself when your heart is racing. Sometimes that grounding comes through breath, sometimes through movement, sometimes through stillness, but always through awareness. Because when you're aware, you're in control. When you're unconscious, you're impulsive. And the cost of impulsiveness is high. One reaction can undo weeks of progress. One unregulated moment can destroy a relationship. One emotional outburst can derail your mission. That's not fear. That's reality. And if you want to build something meaningful, you have to build the internal structure to hold it. That's what emotional regulation gives you. Structure. It keeps your passion in check. It turns your feelings into fuel instead of fire. And when you can do that, you become resilient, not just in action, but in presence. You become someone who can be counted on. Not because you never feel, but because you never lose yourself in what you feel. You know how to stay centered. You know how to return to truth. You know how to choose wisdom over impulse. This isn't easy. It takes practice. It takes repetition. You'll get it wrong. You'll slip. You'll say something in heat that you wish you hadn't. That's part of the process. But every time you come back to center, you build the muscle. Every time you pause instead of react, you gain strength. And slowly, you begin to trust yourself at a deeper level. Not just for what you can do, but for how you show up when things get hard. That kind of trust, that's rare. That's the kind of strength people feel, even in your silence. The fourth step to building a resilient mindset is strengthening your ability to endure discomfort without running from it. Because most people quit too soon, not because they're incapable, but because they haven't trained themselves to stay in uncomfortable places long enough to grow. They think discomfort is a signal to stop, but discomfort is a signal to pay attention. It's where growth happens. It's where strength is formed. It's where patterns break and new ones begin. But if you always run from it, you'll always live below your potential. You don't rise in comfort. You rise in challenge. You rise when you push one rep further than you want to, 1 hour longer than you feel like, one more honest conversation than you're comfortable having. You don't grow by backing away. You grow by staying in it. Staying in it doesn't mean suffering for the sake of suffering. It means choosing not to escape every time things get hard. It means sitting with the tension, holding the weight, carrying the discomfort without letting it dictate your identity. That's what resilience looks like. It's not about having no struggle. It's about increasing your capacity for struggle, increasing your threshold, expanding your ability to remain calm, remain focused, remain true, right in the middle of pressure. And that pressure, it will always reveal your habits. When life gets loud, when plans fall apart, when your patience wears thin, what do you run to? Who do you become? Do you default to blame, to avoidance, to anger, or do you breathe? Do you hold? Do you choose presence over panic? The more you train yourself to stay, when it's hard, when it's uncertain, when it's uncomfortable, the more your threshold grows. The things that used to shake you don't anymore. The conversations that used to break you don't anymore. The pressure that used to paralyze you, now it sharpens you. You become a person who can carry more. Not because life got lighter, but because you got stronger. Because you stayed long enough to build something inside of you that doesn't break so easily. That kind of strength doesn't show up on the outside, but it's felt by everyone around you. Discomfort will never go away, but your response to it can change everything. And the people who build resilience, they don't make pain the villain. They make it the teacher. They sit with it. They study it. They ask, what's here for me to learn? That question changes how you suffer. It turns your pain into preparation, your stress into structure, your tension into training. Now, the discomfort isn't something to avoid. It's something to work with. You don't need to numb it. You don't need to escape it. You just need to stop being afraid of it, to stop running from hard things and start running toward the opportunity inside of them, because that's where the edge is. That's where the next version of you is hiding. And when you live that way, when you stop flinching, you develop something rare, grit. And grit isn't loud. It's not flashy. It's quiet. It's stubborn. It's the part of you that refuses to quit, that stays when others leave, that keeps showing up. The more you choose discomfort on purpose, through discipline, through honesty, through growth, the more control you gain over your life. Because you're no longer driven by how you feel. You're driven by who you're becoming. And that version of you, the one who embraces discomfort, is the version that can lead, that can build, that can raise others, that can withstand the pressure and keep performing because they've trained for it. They didn't hope for it. They built it. Every time you hold the tension instead of dropping it, you prove something to yourself. You earn trust with yourself. You say, I can be counted on. I don't back down. I don't need it to be easy in order to stay committed. That's identity. That's depth. That's legacy. You don't get there by accident. You get there by training your nervous system to sit with the heat and not fold, to breathe through the moment instead of breaking in it, to remain clear-headed when chaos knocks on your door. That training, it's daily. It's in your workouts, in your relationships, in your habits, in your stillness. Every time you want to quit but don't. Every time you want to explode but stay composed. Every time you want to avoid but choose presence. That's one more brick, one more layer of grit. And the longer you live this way, the more you begin to seek discomfort, not recklessly, but intentionally. You start chasing challenge instead of convenience. You start choosing growth over relief. Not because you enjoy pain, but because you understand the power that comes from leaning into it. The fifth step to building a resilient mindset is mastering self-talk. Because no matter how strong you look on the outside, if your inner dialogue is weak, you will break. The words you speak to yourself in private shape how you show up in public. They shape how you handle setbacks, how you carry pressure, how you walk into challenges. Most people spend their lives fighting against their own mind. Not because life is too hard, but because they haven't learned to speak to themselves with strength. They rehearse weakness. They repeat doubt. They recycle fear. And then they wonder why confidence won't stick. You can't walk into battle with a voice in your head telling you you're not enough. You can't pursue your goals with conviction while your thoughts are poking holes in every step you take. You can't lead others while you're secretly tearing yourself down. Resilient people have one thing in common. They coach themselves in the dark. They speak strength when it would be easy to speak fear. They reinforce identity when it would be easier to collapse into insecurity. They don't wait for someone else to encourage them. They know how to do it for themselves. And it's not about lying. It's not about empty affirmations or pretending. It's about speaking words that align with truth. Words that reflect commitment. Words that point you back to action, back to courage, back to who you really are underneath the pressure. Self-talk is a choice, and it's a skill. You can train it, just like you train your body, just like you train your habits. It starts by listening, by paying attention to the voice that shows up when things go wrong. That voice is revealing your programming. When you fail, what does it say? When you're tired, what does it say? When someone criticizes you, when a plan falls apart, when you feel behind, what does it say? That's your baseline. And if it's negative, if it's fearful, if it's weak, it's time to rewrite the script. Because that script shapes everything. You become what you repeatedly say, not out loud, in your head. You become the story you rehearse when no one's around. That story becomes your belief. That belief becomes your posture. That posture becomes your identity. And the identity you carry into adversity determines what you do in it. Do you shrink? Do you spiral? Do you stall? Or do you center yourself, remind yourself, lead yourself? That choice happens in the words you choose. So you rewrite the language. You make your thoughts match your future, not your fear. You speak to yourself like someone who's capable, someone who's grounded, someone who doesn't flinch in the face of struggle. It might feel fake at first. That's okay. It's new. You're breaking decades of automatic negative thinking. But the more you practice, the more automatic it becomes. The more you repeat it, the more it sticks. The more you reinforce strength, the less room fear has to speak. And strength doesn't always sound loud. Sometimes it's quiet, it's calm. It says, I can handle this. It says, I've been here before. It says, one step at a time. It says, no quitting today. It says, let's go again. And sometimes it says nothing at all. Sometimes it's just breath, just presence, just the silence of someone who has learned how to stay with themselves when things get loud. That silence, that's power, because you don't need to yell when you're anchored. This isn't about pretending you're never afraid. It's about refusing to let fear run the dialogue. Resilient people still feel doubt. They still feel insecurity, but they don't give those feelings the mic. They let them speak, but they don't let them lead. They interrupt the pattern. They challenge the script. They say, that's not who I am anymore. They say, I hear you, but I'm moving forward anyway. They say, I've got work to do, and they get to work. Because you can't think your way into strength, but you can speak your way into movement. And movement creates momentum, and momentum builds belief, and belief reinforces the words. It's a loop, a system, a rhythm you can live by. The more you master that rhythm, the less fragile you become. You stop needing ideal conditions to function. You stop needing external validation to move. You become someone who generates their own energy, their own focus, their own fire. And when people ask how you keep showing up, it won't be because you never doubted. It'll be because you learned how to speak strength louder than your doubt. And that, more than anything, will separate you from the crowd. The sixth step to building a resilient mindset is developing intentional focus, because the way you direct your attention determines the direction of your life. What you focus on expands. What you give energy to gains momentum. And when your focus is fractured, your power is diluted. Resilient people don't just have discipline. They have direction. They know where they're going. They know what matters. And more importantly, they know what doesn't. Because distraction is the enemy of progress. It drains your energy, it scatters your momentum, and it leaves you exhausted without getting anything meaningful done. Most people aren't failing because they're not trying. They're failing because they're chasing too many things at once. They say yes to everything. They multitask their life, and then they wonder why they never feel grounded, why they never feel in control. If everything matters, nothing matters. Focus is about cutting the noise. It's about choosing the few things that will move you forward and giving them your full attention. It's about saying no, even to good things, so you can say yes to the right things. And that's not always easy. In fact, it's hard because the world is built to pull you in 1,000 directions. Emails, opinions, distractions, masquerading as opportunities. But if you don't decide what to focus on, someone else will. Intentional focus requires clarity. You have to know what you're committed to. You have to know what success looks like for you. Not for them, not for the algorithm, not for the trend, for you. And then you have to guard that focus like your life depends on it, because it does. Your focus is your life force. Where you place it shapes what you build. And the more scattered it is, the weaker your foundation becomes. But when your focus is locked in, deliberate, unshakable, aligned, you move differently, you create differently, you become a force. And it's not about intensity all the time. It's about consistency. It's about showing up with presence. One task at a time, one goal at a time, one win at a time. That's how you build something strong. When you focus on the process, not just the outcome, you stop being obsessed with speed and start becoming obsessed with direction. You stop worrying about how fast you're moving and start caring more about where you're headed. That shift changes everything because now distractions lose their appeal. They don't pull you off track because your vision is too clear. You're too locked in. You're not looking for stimulation. You're focused on elevation. And when life hits, which it always does, you don't panic. You don't get lost in the chaos. You bring your attention back. You say, this is where I'm going. This is what matters. This is the next step. And you take it. That kind of focus is rare, but it's trainable. You train it by practicing presence, by catching yourself when your mind wanders, by closing the tabs, mentally, emotionally, and physically. You turn off what you don't need. You get rid of what doesn't serve. You declutter your environment. You stop trying to live in every direction at once. You stop giving your energy to things you can't control. You stop pouring your attention into comparison, resentment, distraction, regret, and you bring it all back. Back to now. Back to what you can control. Back to what moves you. Focus isn't something you find. It's something you protect. And the more you protect it, the more powerful it becomes. The more momentum you build. The more clarity you feel. The more resilient you become. Because now, your energy isn't being wasted. It's being directed. And when your energy is directed, you get results. You make progress. You build confidence. You earn belief. Not because you worked harder, but because you worked smarter. Because you stopped being busy and started being effective. Distraction is sneaky. It wears 1,000 disguises. but it always costs you the same thing: your peace, your progress, your power. And the more resilient you become, the more allergic you become to that cost. Because now you know what it takes to get better. You know how valuable your time is. You know what it feels like to be locked in. So you simplify, you focus, you commit, not to everything, but to the right things, the things that stretch you, the things that matter, the things that build something real. That's how you rise, not with scattered energy, but with steady attention. The seventh step to building a resilient mindset is committing to continuous growth, not temporary improvement, not a one-time breakthrough, not a short sprint of effort, but a lifelong decision to keep evolving, to keep learning, to keep leveling up. Resilience doesn't mean you'll never get hit. It means you keep getting stronger so that when you do, it doesn't knock you out. It doesn't derail your progress. It doesn't destroy your identity. It just becomes part of the process, part of the preparation, part of the story you're building. But that kind of resilience, it only exists in people who've made peace with the fact that they are never done, who have chosen to live in the tension of, I'm proud of how far I've come, and I'm not even close to finished. That's not pressure, it's purpose. That's not exhaustion, it's expansion. Because the more you grow, the more you realize how much more there is, not out of inadequacy, but out of vision, out of awareness, out of hunger. Growth is not a hobby. It's not something you do when it's convenient. It's a way of life. It's built into your mindset, your routine, your relationships, your identity. It becomes part of who you are. Someone who seeks growth. Someone who welcomes correction. Someone who chooses the hard path, not because it's glamorous, but because it's worth it. And when growth becomes your lifestyle, setbacks don't derail you anymore. They refine you. Failure doesn't embarrass you. It educates you. Feedback doesn't offend you. It sharpens you. You don't fear what's wrong. You face it and you grow. That mindset is rare. Most people want improvement as long as it doesn't cost them anything. But real growth costs you your comfort. It costs you your pride. It costs you your ego. It demands honesty. It demands reflection. It demands humility. You can't grow if you think you already know everything. You can't grow if you're not willing to listen. You can't grow if you're defensive every time someone challenges you. So if you're serious about building a resilient mindset, you have to embrace learning. Not occasional learning, daily learning, intentional learning, learning from people who are ahead of you, learning from failure, learning from books, from mentors, from experience, from mistakes, from the quiet moments when you realize, I can do better. That realization, that's not shame. It's wisdom. It's maturity. It's the mindset of someone who's not afraid to grow because they're not afraid to start again. They know that falling isn't failure. Staying down is. And resilient people, they never stay down. They regroup, they recover, and they rebuild stronger, smarter, more focused, more grounded. They don't just recover, they return with upgrades because every challenge became part of their evolution. And that evolution isn't a luxury. It's a requirement. The world is changing. Pressure is rising. Expectations are increasing. And if you're not growing, you're falling behind. There is no neutral. There is no pause. You're either getting better or you're drifting. So you make the choice. You decide to stay sharp. You decide to keep your fire lit. You decide that every season, easy or hard, is an opportunity to improve something, to refine something, to let go of something old and step into something better. because that's what growth gives you. A consistent upgrade. You don't reinvent yourself once. You do it over and over. Always adapting, always evolving, always rising. Not to please the world, but to meet your potential. Growth isn't always external. Sometimes the biggest leaps are invisible. The mental breakthroughs, the emotional healing, the perspective shifts, the courage to have hard conversations, the wisdom to stay calm, the humility to apologize. And when you string those small internal wins together over time, you wake up one day and realize you're not the same person you used to be. You're stronger. You're wiser. You're more grounded. Not because the world changed, but because you did. That's the gift of continuous growth. It keeps you in the game. It keeps you evolving. It keeps you from getting stuck. And it makes you resilient. Because no matter what comes, you've trained your mind to ask, what can I learn from this? Resilience isn't something you arrive at. It's something you live. It's not a destination. It's a direction. It's the quiet decision to keep going, to keep learning, to keep evolving, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. And if you've made it this far, you already know. It was never about life getting easier. It was always about you becoming stronger, smarter, sharper, not once, over and over. You don't become resilient by chance. You become resilient by choice. By choosing ownership when blame would be easier. By choosing perspective when panic feels natural. By choosing calm over chaos. Discipline over distraction. Direction over drifting. That choice, it's not made once, it's made daily. Moment by moment. You're not here to escape difficulty. You're here to rise inside it. You're not here to avoid pressure. You're here to perform under it. You're not here to coast. You're here to carry weight that would break a lesser version of you and carry it well. And that's exactly what you've been building. Every time you showed up tired, but stayed in the work. Every time you kept your composure when you could have cracked. Every time you held your ground when it would have been easier to run. Those aren't small things. Those are the foundation. Resilience is earned in the invisible moments, in the early mornings, in the lonely decisions, in the uncomfortable growth, in the daily habits that don't get applause, but build strength just the same. You've earned every inch of your strength, and you'll learn what comes next. So no matter what the season, no matter what the pressure, don't forget who you've become. Don't forget the fire you carry. Don't forget the work you've done to become the kind of person who doesn't quit, who doesn't flinch, who doesn't need perfect conditions to perform. And when it gets tough again, and it will, you remember these steps. You take ownership. You reframe the pain. You regulate your emotions. You endure the pressure. You speak strength to yourself. You focus your attention, and you keep growing, always. This is your edge now. Not just what you've been through, but how you've trained your mind to move through it. Not just the storms you've survived, but the strength you've built because of them. You don't just recover now. You rise. You rebuild. You come back stronger. Because resilience doesn't mean you never get knocked down. It means you never stay there. It means you keep rising. And you carry that mindset into everything you do, into your goals, your relationships, your work, your health, your life.